It's been a while since I've last done anything for YouTube, and after sitting down to start working on this video, I realized that I needed some help. So, being the sane-minded anime content creator I am, I did the obvious and paid $5 for a Hungarian teenager to write the review for me. Like, come on, who do you think writes Mother's Basement's What's in an OP series? He has like a dozen of them in some bunker in the remote Colorado desert. But you didn't hear that from me. But after she ghosted me, I reevaluated my options and decided to do something even crazier. I reached out to the anime YouTuber community, and much to my surprise, they reached back. It was December 17th when I first shared my complete bias and devotion to a little series about the cute girls and their obsession with the great outdoors, and the love didn't stop there. From forcing my ideals into every virtual corner of my Discord server to not so subtly sneaking mentions into it for every single first impressions video I did on the winter 2018 season. Jump forward 3 months and 12 episodes of camp-related escapades later, and the winter 2018 anime Yuru Camp has come to an end after setting up its cozy little camp in the cool shadow of Madhouse's Sora Yori. But comparing the two would be like comparing apples to oranges, so I'll try to avoid unfair comparisons to two very different— Wait, what? They even go camping? That's like the only thing we have! Well, before we get ahead of ourselves, we should first go back a little bit and go into a bit more depth on a term that I've been throwing around that many of you may not understand. Camping. I know I'm talking to anime fans here, and that the world outside your blackout blinds and the comforting walls that surround you with your cheap fairy tale wall scrolls on them can be a scary, confusing place. But fear not. Let me catch you up.
Camping is an outdoor activity involving overnight stays away from home in a shelter, such as a tent. Generally, participants leave developed areas to spend time outdoors in more natural ones in pursuit of activities providing them enjoyment. To be regarded as camping, a minimum of 1 night is spent outdoors, distinguishing it from day tripping, picnicking, and other similarly short-term recreational activities. Camping can be enjoyed through all 4 seasons. There is no universally held definition of what is and what is not camping.
Yuri Camp is exactly what its English translation, laid-back camping, implies. It's a series focusing on the ins and outs of the off-season camping and the cute cast of varied high school students who partake in it, all under the shared belief of the comfiest and coziest impact it provides them. It's simple, it's cute, it's a what you see is what you get kind of series. Taking the first episode as example, which introduces the stoic, independent solo camper Rin setting up her campsite on the lakeside site in view of Mount Fuji, we follow her riding to the campground and a few establishing shots with a slow, melodic guitar accompaniment, simplistic interactions with the groundskeeper with short exposition about their policies, the process of pitching the tent, gathering firewood, etc., usually followed by Rin's internal and occasional external monologue, as well as the use of a narrator who goes more in depth on specific outdoor-related points of interest. These expectorial scenes are broken up more often than not by nothing. Well, technically it's something, but it's intentionally very little. Most of the screen time of any given episode taking place at a campsite features many quiet moments that, while border on the mundane for some, adds greatly to the effect that Yuri Camp is trying to evoke. Just about every shot lingers for a few additional seconds, adding to the laid-back atmosphere the title implies, allowing the viewer to vicariously experience the simplistic joys that camping and taking things a bit slow have to offer. It's calming, it's warm and inviting, and then there's Nadeshiko. To summarize the rest of the series in the most concise way possible, just take everything I said about the first episode and stretch it to fit its one core runtime. There are 2 distinct halves to Yuri Camp: camping and then talking about camping. If our girls aren't physically out pitching a tent, lighting a fire, or any other outdoor activity, you bet your bottom they're talking about it, practicing it, or even role-playing it. You know, like normal Japanese high school girls. Yuri Camp was adapted by Studio C Station that have brought us many different classics of Japanese animation such as Yuru Camp, and Backed by a first-time series director Yoshiaki, who's mostly known by his involvement in all 3 seasons of Kuroko no Basket as episode director and storyboarder, which is a drastically different series both tonally and fundamentally than slow-paced camping. And he did a fine job with his direction and the choices he made, despite what in the end was a rather by-the-books adaptation. Literally by the books, because they followed the manga. You get a bit too closely, but we'll get into that a bit later. In a January interview from Akiba Soken, Yoshiaki had the following to say in regards to his feelings of the original work and its creator Afro Sensei.
Well, it was good. The original work was really interesting, and I was really glad that this is my debut work as a director. There is no huge drama happening in the story, but all the characters are very charming and cute. The characters crafted by Afro Sensei are natural and don't feel like being made up at all. As illustrated by the relationship between Nadeshiko and Rin, the moderate sense of distance between them, which doesn't get too close or too distant, feels very natural and real. But since I don't have any real chance of interacting with high school girls, I can't really say whether it's real or not.
Now let me tell you why I disagree. Any given character within the Yuru-verse can mostly be summed up in their entirety by simplistic one-word sentences on a Wikipedia article. Rin is quiet and reserved, but can be rather outspoken amongst close friends. The pink-haired Nadeshiko, often aptly compared to a dog, by many is outspoken with a relatively short attention span and what seems like a bottomless appetite, loves a large variety of food, camping related or not. The primary focus and character development within the series focuses on this pair and the several off-season camping trips they go on, invited or not. Their arcs are simple yet effective, with each character slowly understanding and accepting the opposite trait of each other. Rin learns to be more outgoing and welcoming of the idea that camping and sharing the same night sky and fire with friends isn't so bad after all, while Nadeshiko learns to take things a bit slower and appreciate the far slower-paced, relaxed alternative of solo camping that Rin also cherishes. Yuri Camp makes it a point to never explicitly say which of these is superior, but rather instead emphasizes the fact that they're different with their own distinct benefits, and that's okay. Rounding out the cast is what on the surface appears to be 2 other characters for an average main cast of 4, but in reality the 2 original members of the Outdoors Club are just sorta kind of there. They take part in 2 total camping escapades, and in terms of screen time and actual development, even simple changes pale vastly in comparison to Nadeshiko and Rin. Ochako is the eccentric comic relief, and then there's Aoi, who only has 2 or 3 brief scenes that aren't shared by the rest of the cast. And while the series may have forgotten about her, that doesn't mean the fans did. But with all that said, there is a small minor issue with Yuri Camp and how it handles its characterization. Ironically enough, the main deterrent for creating a more memorable cast can be found within its main focus: the camping. If you pay enough attention, you'll quickly begin to realize that while the cute girls may look like characters and they may sound like characters, but in reality they are simply vessels for camping. Any scene is camping related, and any action is camping related, and every other conversation is an in-depth educational exposition to the ins and outs of, yes, you guessed it, camping. And while some of you may be quick to call me out by saying, well, isn't that the point? Well, yeah, but it could have been so much more. Never do any of these characters stand out on their own outside of the series' gimmick, and never do we get any substantial amount of information or development to make us care for the cast. I know a lot of these complaints may sound like I'm reviewing a cat, and my issue is that it doesn't bark like a dog, but for a series that defined these characters as realistic high school girls, and for a setup based on the comfort it can convey, the impact would be far more potent and meaningful if it was set around even semi-realistic and developed characters that can go without talking about oil lanterns or proper sleeping bags for more than 30 seconds. The simplest change I would make would be remove the second camping trip and use that time for more meaningful character interactions to be spread throughout the entirety of the series runtime. Like how about a flashback scene with Rin's grandfather, who clearly had some impact on Rin and her admiration for solo camping and her independent nature. Like, as far as I know, one's interest in camping is not genetically carried, nor does it skip a generation if it did so. A short 30-second scene before the opening showing a curious child Rin asking simplistic questions over and over again and prodding her grandfather, and maybe him sharing some bit of meaningful advice that sticks with her, or if you want to be even more simple, how about the girls sharing non-camping related stories around the campfire instead of the 19th in-depth partial recipe cooking tutorial? Like, I get it, you bring the vegetables pre-chopped, you don't have to keep telling me. When it comes to adapting and animating any given manga, it's important to understand what works and what doesn't work for the new medium, and what can be added, removed, or simply tweaked to better fit the pacing and presentation of anime over its still black and white counterpart. But when it comes to a series like Yuru Camp, it's less of an adaptation of the manga and more instead a translation. Panel to panel, scene to scene, text bubble to text bubble, there is little freedom or creativity allowed to the anime director apart from extending out establishing shots for any given campground, which were usually only done in a panel or two for the manga. And while I'm far from an active partaker in the mangas, I feel I should give my 2 cents on the monthly released manga. I don't like it. Everything that elevates it and truly enhances the comfy vibe the show has to offer is not found within these pages. With the anime's existence, I see no reason to recommend reading it, with the show covering exactly what the manga does while also adding the superior backgrounds and of course the addition of voice acting in its calming OST. Not to mention the manga literally hurts my eyes to look at, which is not really the most glowing review for a piece of entertainment. To display detail and shadows or to separate the background from the foreground, Afro uses an abundance of closely placed thin vertical lines which create the effect, at least on the digital version, of looking through Venetian blinds, and muddles most of the scenery which in the manga already lacked clear detail to begin with. In my opinion, the manga is just an inferior product. It's not bad, but deviation to any degree would have made both works stand far better on their own instead of one serving to essentially replace the other.
I fell in love with Slice of Life when I came across Genshiken, a manga and anime series that felt like nothing I'd encountered before. Instead of giant mecha, deadly ninja, or harems of beautiful women fighting over a single nerd, here was a hobbyist series content with exploring life in the slowest way possible. Now, 15 years later, Slice of Life is probably my favourite genre out there, with Silver Spoon, a bittersweet anime about the joys and emotional pitfalls of farming, topping the list. Slice of Life is a perfect come-down from the flashy, in-your-face, action-orientated spectacle that is anime, and I think it's the medium at its absolute best.
It's always interesting to hear fans recount their love for the slice of life genre of anime. Sure, they may name drop a series or two or even talk about their favorite scenes or character moments, but behind their words is more often than not that warmth, the same kind that comes from sharing old stories when you were younger. You build a connection to these slower series and the characters that inhabit them. Yuri Camp is nothing really groundbreaking. The animation is serviceable, most of the cast are forgettable, most scenes or episodes that don't have the girls physically at a campground are far less interesting or developed. The series comedy often has the singular punchline of the girls just being cute or having a funny lay anime expression, but honestly I don't really care about most of these flaws. And yes, while part of me wants the seasonal comfy slice of life anime to change and adapt, but another part of me knows that if they did so, it just wouldn't really be the same anymore. There's a careful concoction at work here, a magical brew made of 2 parts comfy, 1 part feel good, and many other trace elements that while at first may seem at times weak or inferior in comparison to others, but when combined together and mixed up with enough love and passion creates an end result that is truly unique, not for what it is, but what it can be and the feelings it can invoke. Here's my favorite scene of Yuru Camp. It's not of a main character, there is little to no dialogue, it doesn't progress anything, nor does it have any bearing on the episode itself. It's just sort of there. There for you to get what you want out of it or not. It encapsulates everything that makes Yuru Camp special. It's just there. Thank you so much to the talented creators that lent their time and voice for my silly video. PhenomSage, in my opinion, has some of the best episode reviews on the platform and is most known for his in-depth coverage of Land of the Lustrous, from the anime to the manga and everything in between, which I highly recommend for my viewers that enjoyed my Hoseki no Kuni video and just want more gem goodness in their lives. ThePedanticRomantic is well known for her analytical video essays and thought pieces that reach all corners and genres of recent anime. A great starting point would be one of her most recent videos on Sora Yori if you're looking to see a far different take on the slice of life genre compared to Yuru Camp. Beyond Ghibli is, as his name implies, a creator who looks at the films and works from Studio Ghibli and far, far beyond. His relaxing and thoughtful take on what makes anime special, conveyed through approachable yet in-depth videos, are immensely underappreciated. A great starting point and one of my personal favorites would be his video on director Masaki Yuasa, whose work I've mentioned on the channel before.